Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump calls for Iran's unconditional surrender in a major escalation 1 week after the United States and Israel began military operations. The statement comes as diplomatic mediation is discussed even while new missile and air attacks continue across the region. Israel launches heavy air raids on Hezbollah-controlled southern districts of Beirut in a campaign that has killed more than 200 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. The military issued evacuation warnings before targeting areas it describes as key Hezbollah strongholds in the Lebanese capital. Burning aircraft and thick smoke are seen at Tehran's Mehrabad airport after reported bombardment at Iran's main domestic aviation hub. The incident follows announcement of a wider offensive aimed at Iranian military and defense infrastructure. Russian President Vladimir Putin expresses support for an immediate ceasefire during a call with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. The Kremlin says Moscow is urging a return to diplomatic talks as fighting continues between Iran, Israel, and US forces. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says Washington is monitoring reports that Moscow may be sharing intelligence with Tehran. He says any developments are being factored into American military planning during the current regional conflict. Saudi Arabia says its defenses intercepted 6 drones heading towards a major oil field and a ballistic missile targeting a military facility. Authorities say the projectiles were aimed at the Shaybar energy site and Prince Sultan Air Base, which has hosted US Air Force operations. Azerbaijan says security services have stopped a series of alleged Iran-linked attacks and detained 7 suspects. The claim follows accusations from Baku that drones struck an airport and a school in a border region a day earlier. In other news, Italian President Sergio Mattarella declares the Milan Cortina Winter Paralympics open during a ceremony in northern Italy. The event is overshadowed by boycotts from several nations over Russian participation, with some spectators audibly jeering during the parade. Those are the top headlines of the hour. We are, of course, covering the ongoing regional conflict in the Middle East. We have updates to start with from the Israeli military, where officials have reported that more than 500 targets have been struck in Lebanon this week as part of Operation Roaring Lion. The IDF focused airstrikes on Hezbollah-linked command centers, including those used by the IRGC and Hezbollah's financial and naval units, particularly in the Da'iya district of Beirut. Video released by the Israeli army shows explosions in the southern suburbs of the Lebanese capital, though the location and date remain unverified. Thousands of Lebanese civilians have fled their homes as the conflict expands. This follows Hezbollah's rocket attacks on Israel in retaliation for the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Joining us to discuss the situation which is unfolding in West Asia is retired Major General Sardar Kaji, a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joining us live from Jaipur. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us here on the broadcast. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Over the past week, as you've just heard, Israel says it struck 500 targets inside Lebanon, which has led to over 200 deaths and hundreds of thousands being displaced by an already volatile region. From a military and strategic standpoint, does the scale of this targeting suggest that Israel is trying to degrade Hezbollah's long-term capabilities, or is this primarily a deterrence campaign that we're seeing escalate very sharply, and we could possibly see a decline at some point soon?
Good morning, Thomas.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for inviting for your show. My take on the whole issue is somehow the Iran attack on Iran, their top leadership, and thereafter consequent events unfolding in the Middle East has attracted the global attention. There has been so much of retaliation by Iran because Iran has been forced, particularly killing of the school children, 180 of them, followed by no one is talking about. There was a women volleyball team which has been knocked off, and the supreme leader, 49 senior most leaders in the IRGC and elsewhere in Iran. You see, this is a clean departure from the established norms, established rules of engagement. Had there been a conflict which were raging in the past, perhaps it would have been accepted as such. But without any conflict, when the diplomatic mission, the interlocutor of Oman, who was the intermediate or the mediator between USA and Iran, was coming out in the public saying they're very close to a solution, win-win solution for both. And Iran, I believe, had accepted everything with regard to nuclear enrichment being brought down to zero, and also other inter alia issues. Under these circumstances, hitting the target as it has been done is uncalled for. So, therefore, I feel that the actions taken by Israel against the Hezbollah is simply to suppress and keep this front dormant as possible, and focus on Iran. That's my take as a military retired general. Number two, whatever action they are taking now, it is simply to deter Hezbollah. You see, what has happened is there was a ceasefire agreement which came into being since November 2024, if I recall correctly. And since then, there have been ceasefire violations. And but the fact remains that the Hezbollah, which was resting its deployment areas bank on the banks of Litani River, northern bank of Litani River, they had been pushed back, and the regular forces of Lebanon had come forward and started taking the positions which the Hezbollah had occupied earlier, or their placement, gun placements, rocket launchers, etc., were placed. That is one issue. Second issue is that the one brigade equivalent strength, around 3,500 troops of Israel have already gone across the border between Lebanon and Israel there onto the southern part of Litani River. Their aim is to, maybe if push comes to shove, to actually go across, make sure that the Hezbollahs are pushed back. If they have come forward to the bank, northern bank of Litani River, they should be pushed back. So all these activities, they indicate one thing, that as far as possible, Israel will try to keep this front as dormant as possible, as a front which they would like to keep the Hezbollah. Since Hezbollah has announced that they have joined the conflict, they have joined the war despite the ceasefire. So it is one of the methods to keep this front under suppressive fire so that they don't show the ugly head. But my take on the whole issue, Thomas, is that regardless of what is happening, this is a very ugly turn of events. USA would do well, Israel would do well, rather than adopting a confrontationist kind of approach, because for that the impact is going to be adverse the world over, and USA and Israel will not be spared. Let me tell you, because people have not studied Iran in detail. They don't know the capability, they don't know the inventory and the surge. There is a term called a surge capability. Once the conflict is open and declared, then the industrial basis, regardless of the attrition inflicted by the attacker or the aggressor, they will have some kind of an inbuilt production capability. Today they are producing as many as 400 kamikaze drones, that is Shahid 136, which is costing around $20,000 per day. 400 kamikaze drones per day means in 1 month, 12,000. And they have a stockpile of 86,000 kamikaze drones. Similarly, the missile production surge capability has been enhanced. So such like issues, they know that they cannot equate themselves. They are not as good and as strong as USA and Israel together. So, but they also know that in the asymmetric capability, they will have definitely an edge over USA and Israel because both the countries, they are dependent on the interceptors for the Iron Dome. Back to you, Thomas.
Major General G, do stay with us. We're turning to further updates coming out of Lebanon. Israel has intensified its airstrikes on southern Beirut, causing widespread destruction and displacing hundreds of thousands of people. The death toll in Lebanon has now risen to over 200, with 798 injured. Israel had issued evacuation orders for Hezbollah's strongholds in Beirut and surrounding areas, marking the largest such evacuation in Lebanon. The Norwegian Refugee Council estimates 300,000 people displaced, with numbers expected to soar. The Lebanese Health Ministry reported a sharp increase in death as fighting intensifies in the south. Meanwhile, Hezbollah's response has kept tensions high, with Israel targeting multiple facilities in southern Lebanon. The conflict has led to a growing humanitarian crisis, with displacement expected to surpass 1 million. Major General G, with all these conflicts going on in the world, and of course, as former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright said, war is never a tidy business. Civilians always pay the price. We're getting numbers now of hundreds of thousands of people being displaced once again in this conflict. We are unable to get the real numbers out of Iran because of that internet blackout, but there of course is a population of 90 million there and bombing throughout the country. In terms of Lebanon and Iran, how serious could the humanitarian consequences be, particularly in those two major fronts of Iran and Lebanon? As we're just getting these huge numbers and brushing over them very briefly. I mean, 200,000 people have so far been displaced and over 200 people have been killed in Lebanon. Unclear about Iran. What are your thoughts, sir?
Absolutely, Albright is absolutely right. I tend to agree with whatever she has said, but the fact remains that in any kind of conflict, there will be people who will be internally displaced. You call them as IDP. There will be people who will be displaced externally. Case in point is Iran. Now, they have targeted strike against the leadership. Now, Iran has been telling time and again that you have be prepared for the consequences. So they've hit out all the immediate neighborhood. They've hit out at Cyprus. Turkey has not been excluded. They have gone as far as to Azerbaijan, and they have not spared any country, including Oman. Oman is supposed to be one of the countries which has been the interlocutor for peacemaking. Historically, if you look at it, so by hitting out all these countries, Middle East is the Middle East. It's the center of gravity of the planet, and that's how it has been called, named as Middle East. You will have the all transit passengers, 5.5 million passengers that transit through Middle East in a year. India alone accounts for a different figure that I'll not bring in. It will cause only confusion because majority are Indians. 4.4 billion people from India, they go to Dubai and come back, or travel through Dubai. So what I'm trying to say, by hitting out at the immediate neighborhood, they have made sure that not only the American bases are hit, but the troops wherever they have shifted from the respective bases to the hotels. Hotels have not been spared. So that actually, leads to a primary, a secondary, or tertiary kind of a ripple effect. The tourists who pass through all these areas, such a huge population coming here, the footfall is so high that they are stranded, and the stranded people have to be actually evacuated to the respective places. So that is the kind of, these are all transient. These are, I would say, temporary kind of stranding. But there are people who are permanently actually, displaced or dislocated. For example, in Lebanon, take your mind back to 7th October 2023. What happened? 76,000 people had been displaced towards the Israeli side, and towards Lebanon side, it was much more than that. So today, when the bombing has started, I fear that there will be resulting in internal displacement. It may be higher than the last time because the intensity and the enormity of the conflict, which is now spreading by the
Okay.
day, expanding by the day, is out of proportion, disproportionate to our expectations. Therefore, it will result in a huge ramification and serious dislocation of the civilian population, which Albright has actually highlighted. I tend to agree with her. And when you talk about both the fronts together, Iran as also this one, it is going to make a huge impact, huge impact.
So,
Barring for, I think, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon was only the one which Iran has not hit. Barring for these three countries, rest all countries have been hit. It will have a huge cascading
okay.
impact, which will become unmanageable in time, say.
Sir, stay with us once again. We're turning over to further US operations, but now in Latin America. We're in a joint operation. US and Ecuadorian forces have successfully destroyed a drug trafficker training camp near the Ecuador-Colombia border. The camp, run by the Colombian criminal group Comandos de la Frontera, was bombed following a coordinated effort using helicopters, drones and riverboats. The operation, named Total Extermination, is part of Ecuador's broader crackdown on drug trafficking. While no casualties have been reported, Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa praised the success of the strike, emphasizing the importance of US-Ecuador cooperation in fighting narco-terrorism. Meanwhile, the US Southern Command confirmed that the operation was crucial in dismantling narco-terrorist networks in the region. Joining us now is Martin Saar Arias, an international affairs expert, joining us live from the country of Ecuador. Thank you very much, Martin, for joining us here on the broadcast. How crucial has both the Noboa administration and the Trump administration, and successful have they been in coordinating drug trafficking operations coming out of Ecuador?
Yeah, first of all, Ecuador became one of the biggest hubs of narco terrorism in the region. Ecuador exports a lot of cocaine to all parts of the world. Right now, the operations between the US Army and the Ecuadorian Army have not shown any result. They allegedly bombed a base of the FARC forces, a terror group from Colombia in the limit between Ecuador and Colombia, but there's no significant achievement, and so far there are no substantial results about the operations.
And how has Ecuador turned into this front line for narco trafficking operations, and how do you see that relationship moving forward with the Trump administration, which of course is very hostile when it comes to these drug trafficking gangs, and Daniel Noboa? What more can you tell us about his attitude towards it?
So first of all, a small summary of how Ecuador became the hub of cocaine. The strategic position of Ecuador is the perfect place for displacement for cocaine through its ports to Europe and North America. And also one very important fact is that Ecuador has the dollar as the official currency, so it's easier to do money laundering and to engage in these illegal actions. Regarding the relationship and the development between Trump and the Novoa administration, to be honest, I don't have any faith that this will actually end this narco-terrorism in the region. We have the example of Trump liberating a narco. The former president of Honduras, Orlando Hernandez, was a well-known narco that infiltrated a lot of cocaine into the US. So I think this is just geopolitical strategies for making allies in the region for political interest for the Donald Trump administration. I don't think he's really interested in ending this cocaine traffic.
Martin Saar Arias, thank you so much for joining us and providing your insight here on the broadcast. It's great to have you on the program. We now turn to developments in Europe, and Ukraine has accused Hungary of acting under Russian influence after Budapest detained 7 Ukrainian citizens, transporting around $82 million in cash and gold, prompting a sharp escalation in tensions between the neighbours. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha has said that the move has been carried out by Hungary's counter-terrorism forces against 2 Ukrainian armoured vehicles, amounted to state racketeering and terrorism. Sybiha has added that the seizure was a deliberate provocation and part of a broader pattern of pressure linked to recent contacts between Hungarian officials and Moscow. Let's listen in to what Andrei Sybiha had to say.
Ми вважаємо, що це акт державного рекету і тероризму, неприпустимий. Ми будемо діяти дзеркально. Це неприпустима поведінка, це безвідповідальна поведінка, це провокативна поведінка. А з іншого боку, ми будемо діяти в межах міжнародного права, дотримуючись всіх наших зобов'язань і відповідально, але рішуче. Ми не допустимо приниження над нашими громадянами, ми не допустимо провокацій щодо України, ми не допустимо викрадення, це теж і акт викрадення українського майна. Ми теж бачимо тут російський почерк. І мені теж здається, що ось оці поїздки деяких представників угорської влади до Москви, що все це ланцюжок певних подій, певних провокацій, і їх, мабуть, слід очікувати і...
Joining us is Major General G once again on this. Let's take a look at this relationship, Ukraine and Hungary. Hungary, of course, a member of the European Union, a bloc with the vast majority of which supporting the Ukrainian cause against Vladimir Putin and Russia. To what extent has Hungary's approach towards Moscow strained its relations with Ukraine and the European Union, which of course it is a part of?
A lot. You see, you need to look at Hungary and Slovakia from the perspective of, for lack of correct expression, I would say strategic autonomy. These 2 countries, regardless of the sanctions imposed, they have stood up to all challenges. And despite all sanctions, these 2 countries consistently making all-out effort and buying oil from Russia. And if you look at the geopolitical affiliation and the affinity, both the countries, they have been great supporters of Russia and Russia's cause. If you look deep into the political dynamics as also geopolitics and the economic component, and the most important thing is there is a pipeline which goes through Ukraine to Hungary. The pipeline had turned defective. It is supposed to be repaired. Unless it is repaired, the oil cannot actually go smoothly. It cannot be supplied from Russia's side through Ukraine to Hungary as also to Slovakia. That pipeline, unfortunately, because of the old animosity or traditional animosity and difference of view, and I would say a very sour relationship, that has not been repaired. Although this particular report has got a lot of meaning and a lot of pattern which has been established in the past, there is a racketeering going on. There are cases of terrorism reports in the past as well. In the instant case, I feel that it is because the pipeline repair is not taking place with the expertise coming from Ukraine, or Ukraine is not providing any kind of expertise. That is the center of the issue, which is actually souring and bringing up these new emerging issues, which never is to catch, or very limited number of times it is to come to the mainstream media. I think that is the issue. If the oil pipeline is repaired and smooth flow of oil continues, as used to happen earlier, to Hungary and Slovakia, then I think all these issues will get resolved automatically. That's my take, and you may have some additional inputs which I don't have. And so as per the inputs available from the open source and my study, I feel it is all attributed to the old pipeline case which is lying defective and yet to be repaired, because Ukraine is not extending the forthright and spontaneous support of the expertise and the mechanics who have the know-how on the subject and who can repair this particular defect. Back to you, please.
Major General Sadakarji, as always, such a great pleasure, sir, to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time in joining us here on NewsX World. We now move on and over to the United States for our next update, where the Trump administration has introduced strict new rules for civilian AI contracts, requiring companies to allow any lawful use of their models. This comes amid a dispute between the Pentagon and AI firm Anthropic, which has recently designed a supply chain risk by the Pentagon. As a result, government contractors are now barred from using Anthropic's technology for military work. The General Services Administration, otherwise known as the GSA, has proposed guidelines that mandate AI companies seeking contracts to grant the US an irrevocable license for lawful use of their systems. These guidelines also prohibit contractors from encoding partisan or ideological judgments into AI data outputs and require disclosure of any regulatory compliance modifications. The GSA has ended Anthropic's contract, terminating its availability to US government branches. Now we move on. My colleague and senior editor Uday Pratap Singh has spoken to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Rwanda, Oliver J.P. Ngondria, about India-Rwanda relations, the potential of trade between Africa and India, and Rwanda's position on the Middle East conflict, and how the Iran war is affecting oil supply and economic costs. All this and more at the Raisina dialogue held in India's capital of New Delhi. Let's take a look.
Joining us on the sidelines of Raisina Dialogue on NewsX now is the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Rwanda, Olivier de Gundre. Welcome, thank you very much for being with us on NewsX and welcome to India.
Thank you very much.
Where do you see India-Rwanda relations headed post-2026? Your visit, of course, is a good step in taking the relations forward. Where do you see direction of relations headed?
It's good for me to be here in New Delhi for the Raisina Dialogue. To further strengthen our relations between Rwanda and India. Actually, before the Raisina Dialogue, we had a joint commission meeting between Rwanda and India to review our relations and our cooperation. India is an important partner to Rwanda. The good relations have been being strengthened over the past years, but also trade and investment. India is the second investor in Rwanda with a little less than 500 million US dollars. But we can do more in different sectors, including ICT, technology, but also manufacturing. We believe that those two sectors have the potential to grow between the two countries.
Also trade. Where do you see the relations vis-a-vis trade going between the two countries? Do you see potential of more trade between India and our partners in the African Union, including yourselves?
Actually, we believe that Rwanda could be the gateway of India to Africa, because Rwanda has a really very conducive business environment. We have a young population. We have an ambition to really grow our economy, including with our partners. We already have Indian investment in Rwanda, and we believe that if with those investments and also with our support to our local manufacturing in order to add value to our raw materials, which will enable us to export, so to reduce our trade balance, this would really continue our path to privilege trade over aid. You know that African countries have been living under development aid, so we need more trade and investment rather than development aid. And we are happy that in 2 months, end of May, we'll also have an India-Africa summit, which is an important event for India and Africa.
Absolutely, looking forward to that. Now, the Middle East conflict is on as well. What is Rwanda's position on the war in Iran?
Oh, of course, we are affected. We will be affected by this conflict, as we are affected by the conflict in Gaza and also by the conflict in Ukraine. So what we want, of course, is to have a political solution as soon as possible. Of course, it's a conflict far away from us. It's those powers that have the ability to solve the crisis, including also the UN Security Council, to ensure that there is a way out to this crisis as soon as possible.
Because, of course, if it gets prolonged, then oil supply takes a hit, economy takes a hit, energy security takes a hit, isn't it?
You are right, and we'll all be affected. All countries of the world will be affected. This is why we believe that it's important that all countries involved, with the support of the UN Security Council, solve this conflict as soon as possible.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Journalist Dinesh Uday Pratap Singh in Delhi, NewsX.